Hi, love leaders. Dr. Shanon here. I am thrilled to talk to you today about our special guest that is about to be on our podcast with us as well. You're going to be introduced to Maddie Corman. A lot of you are probably aware of who she is already, but just to give you a little backdrop, she's been around since the 80s as a teenage movie superstar, really. I know her best from her work in the John Hughes movie, Some Kind of Wonderful. She's also been in some other, as a teenager, movies such as 7 Minutes in Heaven, but she has gone on to make a name known for herself in so many different off-Broadway shows, so many different awards that I can't even begin to, give her full acclaim for. But most recently, she developed this one solo drama script that she has now produced and was recently released on HBO Max, and it's called Accidentally Brave. The reason why this is pertinent to our community is she is speaking in reference to her own personal life, and it is raw and it is vulnerable. And she is, as she said, brave to want to even come forth in such a public way in sharing her story through her best known venue, which is drama. I've watched it. You're going to want to watch it too. She is able to do this from a place of strength as she shares her own personal story of being able to walk through the revelation of her own spouse's sexual addiction after years and years of marriage and what she felt like was a pretty healthy marriage. She speaks of it publicly because, unfortunately, unlike a lot of us that are in this arena, or if you've been impacted by a loved one's sexual addiction, those are not necessarily things that always are played out in public headlines. Unfortunately, hers was. And so she, in her own healing journey, has had to somehow grasp it, being willing to be accidentally brave enough to share it in a public format as well. And we are so appreciative of Maddie and her willingness to do that in such a heartfelt way. Hers is a success story as they have worked out their marriage, and it brings encouragement and hope, and also steps that are necessary to be taken when you are finding yourself in the same situation. So, without further ado, I can't give enough accolades to Maddie's willingness to participate in this interview. Please welcome with me, Maddie Corman.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Doctor, and I'm a fan of yours and the work that you're doing with couples and with partners, and there's a lot of overlap in what we're doing these days. So yeah,
There is.
to speak with you.
Yeah. So diving in, yes, there's a lot of overlap with what I do and what you've been through, but what I am so impressed with is the real personal behind the closed doors things that not anyone normally or typically will talk about. You put it like front and center. So can you give us a little bit of background at what led you to, tell a little bit of your story, what led you to write this play?
I mean, there there I was my whole life having blown up, which I didn't understand at the time, but came to understand was a result of sex addiction and compulsion that my husband of 20 years had been secretly
Mm,
struggling with. I had no
wow.
idea first of all, I had no idea that sex addiction was a real thing.
Right.
Um, I didn't know anything about betrayal trauma or anything about anything. I just knew that this was a nightmare and that the person I loved so deeply was not the person I thought he was. My family, I was so worried about my three children. Our story is different. Well, I thought it was more different. I've come to learn that more people have experienced this, but my husband's,
Thanks to the help of you being willing to talk about it.
well, I say thank you. And also, the reason the show is called Accidentally Brave is that because I'm not super famous, but I'm in a kind of a public facing
Yes.
actress,
Mhm.
actressy person, and my husband was a director and producer, and he was arrested, and it was in the paper for his viewing of or downloading of illegal pornography. And within 24 hours of that happening, it was also all over the papers and all of our friends and families, Facebook pages, etc. So I'm not that brave to talk about it because it was already out there. I don't
Yeah.
know, I'll never know what would have happened if I could have kept this a secret. But because part of the story, and I would say the worst part of the story, and some even inaccurate parts of the story were being reported in places
Right.
like the New York Post,
Right.
gave me a little bit of permission to tell my part of the story. It was really important to me
Absolutely. Yeah.
to, um, as a betrayed spouse and as someone in just heart-shattering pain. I could barely breathe, and I'm a very outgoing social person, and I had lived on the earth for 40 plus years, and I didn't know anybody who had been through anything like this. Now it turns out I had, it's just nobody talks about it.
Correct.
I was looking for, and this is coming up on 10 years ago.
It's
Um,
10 years ago, but at that time, Maddie, how long had you been married?
20, we'd been together 20 years. We had been married about 17 years. We had
Right.
3 kids.
Okay. Yeah.
We
Built
had
a whole life.
a whole
Yes.
and a beautiful life and a
And a
beautiful
beautiful
marriage.
family. Yeah.
And and not a perfect life, not a perfect marriage, but I had no idea that this
Right.
was a part of his life. It certainly wasn't a part of our marriage at all.
Right. Hmm.
It was just a really big secret. And
And so you were about to tell us that it was discovered, right? Because a
it
lot of
was,
times, as much as we would hope that it would be just a disclosure, it's typically a discovery, right?
well, since I've become very public about my story, and since my story was made public, I have had, that's both a blessing and a curse. And most people would say just a curse. But the blessing is that people have shared their stories with me. I would say hundreds and hundreds of mostly women have told me their stories. And yes, I can count on one hand, maybe half of one hand, the number of times that people find out because their partner comes forward and says, "There's something I have to tell you." Most
Right.
of us have a D day. And
Hmm.
my D day was when I was driving to work and got a call from my daughter, my then 16-year-old daughter, who was screaming in a way that I had before I just knew something was very, very, very wrong. And the women that I speak to, their stories, everybody's story is different, but that feeling of holding it together when you find out something about your life is completely different than what you thought it was going to be. I certainly didn't right away think, you know what would be a great idea? I should write about this and perform it. That wasn't on my mind. But
No, absolutely not. I
I
get that.
was I received a lot of grace at that time, including a woman that I call in the show, I call her my angel, both because she
Yes.
really is an angel to me, but also to protect her anonymity because her story um, was not public, but she read about what was happening and just saw a similarity in our stories, even though her story had nothing to do with anything illegal. Her story was much more about infidelity and a more traditional betrayal.
Right, right.
But the feelings are the
Are
same.
very same.
And
Uh,
she was kind enough to find a friend of a friend and get in touch with me and say, I'm here. And I send
Oh,
love
wow.
and she said, I'm here to help. And I'm here to say that this could be the beginning of something really great. And I was like, well, she sounds.
Were you ready to hear that? I know that you now look back and you do consider her your angel and you talk about her in the play, but is it really difficult to kind of nuance when you can hear a message of hope when you've been totally shattered?
uh, I didn't believe her, but there was something about her that was so assured, and everyone
Mm,
around me looked aghast and she looked calm, and she
nice.
sounded really, she had this faith that my kids were going to be okay. And
Ah,
she has children and she had been through something. Again, I kept saying, but mine is different, mine is worse, mine is
right.
this. And she kept kind of steering me back towards, this thing is this thing, and we need to help each other. So I think at some point, she happens to be a very successful, in the traditional sense of, I've changed my definition of success over the last 10 years,
Uh-huh,
but she's
absolutely.
successful in every sense of the word. At a point, maybe a year or two in, when I said,
Mm,
what can I possibly do? I mean, the gift she gave me, I really do believe she saved my life, and multiple times, because it was so lonely and I could reach out to her and she was just there in so many ways. But when I said, do you want a toaster? Like, what can I do to repay you? You don't need anything. And she said, just do this for someone else. And I don't think she meant you should do an off-Broadway show and then film it for HBO, but she was happy that I did,
yeah.
because it is the loneliest time, and the love that she gave to me and to my husband.
Okay.
I was receiving a lot of calls during
Okay.
this time. A lot of people were reaching out from every moment of my life. I had lived a pretty big life. I had gone to different schools, I had lived in different states, and everybody reached out to me. But very few people reached out to him, and I understand that. It's a
Right.
really scary thing, and upsetting. And let me
Right.
just say to you and to anyone listening, I don't center myself as a victim in this story. There are victims of child pornography, and it's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing.
Right.
And everyone in my family feels that way. But I was falling apart, and this person helped me
Try
by
to undergird
saying,
it.
I believe that your husband is not the worst thing that he has ever done. I believe that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I think
Good for
as much
them.
as I didn't believe her, I wanted to believe her, and there was a part of what she was offering that made sense.
Yeah. Someone that's gone before you that can kind of nurse you along. And hope is a powerful emotion, right? In the midst of crisis, that you aren't feeling it, but the possibility that you could get to the other side. I love
I
that.
couldn't even imagine. Hope was so, that was such a high expectation. I mean, the thought of being serene was well beyond what I was wishing for. I was
Mhm.
wishing that my kids would not be completely broken.
Correct.
I don't even know if
What mom would not be able to relate to that?
it was, I really did feel like I failed at the one gig that I was most proud of,
Mm,
because I had two 11-year-old little boys and a 16-year-old girl that were traumatized. But just just to tell anybody who's listening, my kids are awesome. And we've been through a lot, but we are we are together, and I don't advocate that for everyone, but that's been our story. And I
Yeah, and
and
that's kind of the crux of where I want to go. Not only were you personally, maritally, familially, impacted by this, but then you have the public humiliation, but it really touched even your both of your personal livelihoods, correct?
oh, I
There
mean,
was loss at every level.
the consequences of this were so tremendous, not just for him, but for me. Yes, financially, legally, emotionally, physically. I mean, we lost our home, we had to move.
Wow. Mm,
Um, it affected our social life. It affected every aspect of my life and certainly his life. And I think that would be true even if we hadn't stayed together. Um, so, and again, I don't wish that on anyone. And there is something about being down on the ground. And I
yep.
know in your practice, you talk about faith, and there was really no one else to go to. I mean, this angel could only talk to me so many times a day, and there
Right.
was no one, and I had to get really close to a higher power because there was
Mm,
nobody could tell me it was going to be okay. Nobody could even tell me what it was going to look like.
right.
And my husband, who went pretty quickly to a 45-day
Yeah, I
rehab.
was going to ask you, what were your first steps and what were his first steps? Because I think the misinformed communities like, oh, they need couples counseling, and that's just not the case. In
No.
fact, couples counseling is contraindicated if there is an ongoing addiction. Those mean individual tracks. So can you just kind of journey us through those early days of what you were doing and what he was doing?
Yes, I can. And I also just want to say that coming up on 10 years into my own recovery, talking about this is still hard.
I
And I
bet.
want to do it, and I feel like it's my calling to do it. And I want to share with anyone out there who's beating themselves up, going, I should be over this, I should be, should be,
uh,
should be.
yeah.
Just to say that I'm almost 10 years in, I've done a lot of work. And when I talk about these early days, my
Yeah.
throat feels tight, I feel it in my chest.
Right.
Um, and it's betrayal trauma is no joke. It is so real, and it really still
So
lives in my body. So, yes, the early
thank you for
days,
that message for the woman out there that's like, will I ever get over this? Yeah.
yes. And the answer is yes, and.
Yes.
I
And
think for me, waiting, so much has been lifted. And I promise you, I will get back to the early days, but I didn't think I'd ever get over any of this. And I certainly didn't think the anger that would erupt in me um, would go away. And that has mostly, most depends on the day.
that's a
But
good message.
it's a long journey, and I think that, I lost my mother when I was 16, and it was heartbreaking and heart shattering in a different but kind of similar way. And
Right.
one mistake I think I made, I was so young, was
Right.
I don't think other people can handle how I feel. This grief is so big. I'm gonna just keep it real
Keep it.
quiet.
Hmm.
And this takes it takes what it takes. So in the early days of this um, huge explosion in my life, um, in some ways I'm really good in a catastrophe. It was triage. It was kind of like, okay, where do the kids,
Stop the bleeding. Right.
and yeah, containment and stop the bleeding. We kind of huddled together. My husband was horrified and terrified and admitted immediately that he needed help.
Oh, wow.
I think,
That's a good first step, right? That's a good indicator.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted so badly for him to say this was a mistake and it wasn't real, but that wasn't what he said. So, wrapping my brain around that, it's also not clear where to go. At least to me, it wasn't. So, again, this angel
Angel.
referred us to a sex addiction rehab. I didn't even understand that porn addiction was a real thing or sex addiction or any of it.
Hmm.
Um, but I had a lovely therapist who looked completely shocked and terrified when I told her. And I knew that I had to get to somebody, like you said, who really understood
Right.
and was trained in this so that I could put my oxygen mask on. That
Correct.
happened pretty quickly. But the first thing I think we did was get my mother-in-law came. She had been away and she came and took my boys to be with her for a little while, and my daughter went to her best friend just so we could figure out
Mhm.
and they
Yeah.
could have a little bit of space because the press was actually at our house
Oh gosh.
and that was not productive, and I needed
No.
a minute to just catch my breath. But we did find a place. He checked in. I mean, he signed up to go. And then we came home and kind of gathered all the kids together and said, Dad's sick and he needs to go get some help. And we're going to try to get this family well, whatever that looks like. And he left pretty quickly. I mean, we had to deal with lawyers too at this time.
Right.
Everything was happening really quickly. He lost all his work within, I'd say, 3 days, anything that was coming up. Um, I finished the job I had been doing, which don't even ask.
I don't even know.
I
That's
can't.
angelic in and of itself, right?
When I
I don't know
when
how
I
you do that.
when I wrote with the play, I have a really great producer who agreed to produce it after she saw a reading, Daryl Roth, and she's, I've had a lot of angels. She's another angel. She thought it was a beautiful piece of work. She liked that it was, in a sense, a love story in addition to having this salacious, sensational, oh my gosh, the lady who stayed with the guy who did the thing. But she said to me, I have one note. I don't think it's believable that you went back to work the next day. And I said, well, I did. You know,
Right?
I had
Uh,
to, a part of me was probably in shock, but also
uh-huh. Hmm.
I didn't, I was well aware pretty quickly that I was going to be the breadwinner for the family. And I didn't really know that
Yeah.
quitting, I had one more day to go shooting
Yeah.
this guest spot.
Yep.
And
One day at a time and just do the next right step, right?
and I really didn't know the right. Nobody said, "Oh, this is what you do." And I think that day that I did finish up the job, people didn't know yet. And
Hmm.
then I've had to keep going, by the way, to many a set where people did know and knew my husband and knew our
Hmm.
story, and I had to kind of put on the blinders and do my job. But those early days, he did go pretty quickly to a 45-day inpatient rehabilitation. And
Wow.
that was, I feel so lucky that we didn't think too much about that because a lot of people that I now work with
Hmm.
or talk to say it's too much money, it's too much time, what will people think? We had
Right. I
such,
can't be out of my life for that long. Yeah.
again, the gift of desperation. There was
Hmm.
no life for us.
Right.
Nobody was asking where he was. So he was able to do that. We were throwing money at the problem, not really thinking too clearly. And
Hmm.
I'm glad
Yeah.
because it was life-saving.
Necessary. Absolutely.
This is pre-COVID, so everything was in person. But it was really hard for me. I had to find a meeting. I don't think I found, it's a weird thing to talk about 12 step because it's anonymous, but I share my own story, and it was recommended to me that I go to an S-Anon meeting, which is for partners of sex addicts, but I didn't do that right away.
Okay.
Do
And
that.
that, I'm glad that you mentioned that because that is a free resource out there for people that are in relationships with somebody that might be struggling with some kind of sexual addiction,
That is
correct?
It's true, and I'm all about this is a very expensive kind of recovery. Finding the right help is really hard and it is expensive and it does help. But there are free groups. And now with Zoom, there are so many meetings and there are also way more podcasts and books
Mhm,
and things available
mhm,
that are reasonable. But for
mhm.
me, the loneliness was killer as well. And when I
Yes.
went to,
Isolation, right?
ah, it's so lonely. And even people who love me so much and wanted to talk, I just couldn't. And so for me, one of the big moments I think that I started to believe there might be some hope for me and for our family was when I went to Family Week at
This was my favorite part of the Accidentally Brave show is you clenched it, having worked with women behind closed doors and the roller coaster ride of I should be happy that my partner is willing to go get treatment and willing to go get help. But at the same time, I'm very angry that he's now getting to go and be in this really nice
Oh,
establishment. And
I was
I'm left at home holding down the fort. I mean, I loved how you were able to be so real and authentic and raw with the roller coaster of those emotions.
Well, thank you. And they are and were especially a roller coaster is a really good way to put it. I was so up and down. And I think one of the things that made me want to write about this and be honest is that I trusted myself as an actress, not necessarily as a writer. And I just really hadn't seen this story told.
Right.
And it's not pretty and it
It's
is
not.
messy. And if people had just said, 3 years after they read about this and ran into me and said, are you divorced or are you married? Like, that's
Ah,
the only question people want to know. Did you stay or did you leave? And I stayed. And there's so much more to that story. That's not neither choice is easy. And I
right.
don't recommend my choice to everybody, but I wanted people to see that it was a struggle, that choosing to stay doesn't mean that all is forgiven and everything is easy. I got my coaching certificate.
Good for you.
Well, I just had so many women calling me and reaching out, and I wanted to help, but I wanted to also make sure I knew what I was doing. But what I'm finding more and more is that our society shames women no matter what.
Yes.
And there's a big group of women who get told a lot if you come from a religious community, you
Yes.
have to forgive and forget. And then
Hmm.
there's another more secular community that says, if my husband did that, I would kick him out, and shame on you for staying. You're not a good,
Aren't you scared to have him around the children? Yeah, I know.
all the things.
It's a no win sometimes. And I do work with a lot of faith-based couples and one, even coming forth with something like this is even more hindered in the faith-based community. But two, like those couples have a tendency not to necessarily consider options outside of just staying in the committed marriage, regardless of whether their partner is willing to do the work. So you got into your support networking, and he immediately was forthcoming, admitted that he needed help and was willing to go and get help. Can you tell me what were your indicators that, hey, I think we're going to try to make a go of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Going to Family Week was very helpful to me for a couple of reasons. One, I heard experts, not just my husband, telling me that he was not a lost cause. I heard real doctors and people with many degrees saying this is a real thing, this is a real addiction, and that there is hope, that this is not a broken person, that this is a person who's struggling, and that if he does the work, And then I was told the thing I didn't really want to hear was that I had to do
I
some.
had to do the work.
And I have a lot of women who say it's not fair. I didn't do anything, and some say I'm not going to do any work. But
Yes.
my therapist, who was very well trained in sex addiction and partner betrayal, said, I lay on her couch and I wept. And I said, I guess I have to get divorced. And she said, well, you don't have to do anything. And she said, how about we put a pin in that for at least
Yeah.
6 months because you need to do some work because you've been traumatized and let's see what he does. And I
Mm.
said, but did you not hear what I said? And she said, it can work. And I said, have you ever seen it work? Because that's another thing. A lot
Hmm.
of couples don't talk about this. And one of the reasons I like to go on podcasts and talk now is my movie is about the first year or so. But here we are 10 years in and we're doing really well as a couple. It's not,
I love that message.
but we are way more intimate. And I don't just mean a sexual intimacy, which is there as well, but the intimacy of a marriage when there's honesty. And
Hmm.
and and by the way, talking about faith, that wasn't a huge part of our marriage, and it is now.
Oh,
It's
wow.
because my husband, this brought him to his knees. There was nobody who was there for him.
Yeah.
And I think that that really is a time where you get cracked open and you have to look up instead of looking around. And he did.
Yeah.
So I
The
think,
wisdom of your therapist to say, you don't have to make any decision right this
oh, in
minute.
fact, you
And
should.
let's put a pin in it and let's see what he's gonna do, right?
And that's what I think a lot of people they want to know right away. And my husband really wanted to say, look, I'm better. I'm better. I'm never again. And look at this. And I didn't trust anything he was saying.
I
I didn't
bet.
trust myself. My
Hmm.
gut had been off. So I had to regain my own kind of the ground under my feet. And I did look, and it is even to this day, it's a different kind of marriage than it was,
Hmm.
which is not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
I had blind faith and trust. I really did. This was not on my radar. I watched him show up for his meetings. I watched him show up for our family. He had a lot of consequences. A lot of women I talk to, they're the only ones that know there was infidelity or betrayal of any kind. And that's really hard because the only consequence their partner may be receiving is from them.
Mm.
I didn't have to do much. Believe me, I
Right.
was angry as I shared, but he lost everything.
Right.
And if he had the time and the willingness to devote himself to his early recovery and the humility. A big part of recovery from any addiction is humility. And I think going back into a high power job does not really lend itself to a lot of humility. I certainly think it can, and
Right.
people who are willing to do the work. But he had the terrible, wonderful gift of desperation. And I
Yeah.
watched, and I watched him go through.
That's a really good combo. And I just want to just put, a highlight here. He put in the time to do the work. And it was out of a willingness and a humility of heart. I think those are some really great combos to really kind of put right here as what were you looking for? And sometimes you can't put an accuracy, but it wasn't just a check the box. I mean, you felt this heart desire
I
to
did,
really.
but I
Mhm.
had to see it over a period of time too. And I made
Mhm.
a bunch of boundaries
Mhm.
that he showed up for. And
Mhm.
it was about consistency and about seeing it. And we did a check-in. I don't know if you do use this, but we did one called Fanos.
Mhm.
It
Very familiar with Thanos.
and that was really helpful. And it was a roller coaster. It was not a straight line. We had times where I felt early, where I felt so close to him because this giant secret was out. I
Out.
was
Mhm.
wondering what was going on with him.
Mhm.
Because especially in the last year or two, I didn't know anything was going on but I knew something was going on. He was irritable, he was depressed, he was
Mm,
quick to fly off the handle at small things. And that wasn't making sense to me. Our intimacy was off, but I would say, "What's going on?" "Oh, nothing. I'm tired." We did have three kids. He
mm-hmm.
was working really long hours. Life is really stressful. So all of these
Correct.
things were true, but there were
Mm,
lies of omission. What I needed most was to feel safe and to feel valued again.
I
And that
love that.
happened
I
over.
love that. So in this Spanos thing, and a lot of people who aren't familiar with it, it is a form of an acronym of checking in with each other, on a pretty frequent basis. And so to feel valued and safe, that means that he had to really hold space for whatever you were feeling that day and not put pressure on you to get to any other place or
Yeah.
to speed up your own healing process, right? It was a really act of patience and value, right?
Yes. And he did, I give him credit. And I think the biggest fights we had during those times were times where he said, "I already told you that," or "I guess I'm just farther along in my recovery," and things like that. Yeah, that was a big fight. Because I think that he was so honestly excited to be doing all the work he was doing and to
Wow, I
be
bet.
sober.
A
And
relief,
and
right?
I was destroyed. And so it is a different trajectory. Um,
Hmm.
and and I think when I talk to men, the betrayers, if there's anything, the best thing that I could suggest is exactly what you just said, Shannon, to hold space for her pain and don't get defensive, which is so hard.
Hard. It is.
Say, if you see an email come up and your husband erases it, rather than
Hmm.
saying, "Oh my God, it was nothing, it was junk mail," why are you saying, "Wow, it
Hmm.
must be so hard to see me delete an email and have your whole body shut down. I did that to you. It
Yeah.
was nothing, and I'll show it to you, but I am so sorry that you have to be on high alert like that. That must be
Hmm.
exhausting. I'm
Hmm.
sorry."
That's so good. That is so good. I love that practical, application. There is a point in your play where he had a moment like that where he held space and was able to put words where you finally like, oh, I think he gets it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Can you
that
tell
was,
us?
yeah, I didn't, my husband very early on was like, "I broke you, I want to fix you." And I was in full agreement with that, but it didn't work like that. He couldn't just say, "I'm sorry." And I didn't realize that in addition to seeing him doing his work, there was something really, really, really important to me. And that was that he at least try to recognize the pain I was in
Absolutely.
and not just say, "Sorry, I hurt you." And I share it in the show, but I'll share it here. There was this day where he said, he just saw me probably on the bathroom floor sobbing, or maybe just walking with a fake smile when we had to go do something at the kids' school, which was just, there were a lot of painful moments. And he said, "I know what I did to you. It's as if I was in a cement truck and you were in the driveway and I ran you over with the truck. And then I look and you're lying there and I back over and I run you over a second time. And I get out of the truck and you're lying there bloody and beat up. And I call the ambulance and the ambulance arrives and I get into the ambulance and drive away, leaving you there on the ground."
Ooh,
And it was the closest description
yeah.
anyone had ever offered to how I felt during these early
Yes,
months.
absolutely.
That
For
allowed,
every woman that is looking to have some kind of understanding that someone gets it, I hope they hear that. I hope they go back and watch that because even I sat there and said, ring that bell over and over again. And then, every woman is obviously wanting their man to get it. But of course, we're talking in generalities that, the betrayer is the male, and it can happen the other way around.
Absolutely.
But everyone is trying to have that moment of empathy. Brene Brown's research is so big and so real. Vulnerability met with empathy brings healing. And so that's a big moment.
It is a big moment, and it's not always there. And I think two people who love each other and are trying so hard, but that is something that's really, really tough to rebuild.
Mm,
And
mhm.
on good days, it helps so much. It helps so much. And there's a lot of rage and a lot of hurt. But again, I think the more I could feel valued and safe, the more I could let him back in. And it wasn't overnight. And I think I had maybe half of my body in the marriage for a while, and then,
Okay.
still had
That's
like,
honest. That's honest.
yeah. I mean, we had a lot of people said to me, well, you should get divorced. And I don't like when people just throw that out as if that's a really easy option.
Right? Then they don't have to walk in your shoes. They tell you a solution, but yet are they really going to help you walk that out? Right?
And but it's not, none of it is easy. It was
Hmm.
just really painful. I felt like my history had been taken away. So
Correct.
this was a long process, but and I feel so lucky and proud of us as a family that, and we're together. And my husband also worked to restore his relationship with each kid, um,
Wow.
because I couldn't do that for him. And that
Mm,
helped. That helped, watching him take accountability. It's a tricky
yeah.
thing with an addict because they want to be understood as, this is the addiction, it's not me. But you also have
Mm,
to take accountability for the hurt that was caused.
mhm.
And I think my husband has done a really good job with that. He also, like I said, we in our family, we give people a chance to get back up, like Brene says about being on the floor. And
Mhm.
we gave him a chance to, and he's taken that.
Takes both. Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful. I'm proud with you, Maddie, that you can give that kind of testimony, and you're very willing to put it out there in the light, for all those that are walking a very similar path. Maybe not exactly the same, but very similarities. So, two things before I kind of let you go, and I thank you, and I value so much of your busy time. Um, to my community that's out there listening, what word of encouragement to maybe the woman who either has recently discovered or suspects, what kind of encouraging word would you want to give her? And like, to your point, if someone in my community is out there and they are struggling and they're in an intimate relationship, what encouraging word would you have for both parties?
Well, that's a beautiful question. And I think that for both parties, I can say I have deep compassion for both of you. And I do. I have met so many, I hate to even use the word, but betrayers
Mm.
who love their family, who
Yes,
love their spouse. And it was
absolutely.
much easier for me to see that in other people than in my own person. And
Right.
you are not the worst thing you've ever done. There is hope for restoration.
Mm,
And I think to the partners who are betrayed and feeling so alone, I can tell you the
yes.
internet is an incredible thing and also so dangerous. And
Mhm.
it's allowed, it's almost like the crack cocaine of this addiction. And I know not everyone dealing that you deal with is a sex addict, but it is really challenging out there. And there's so
Yeah.
much shame around sharing this. But for me, knowing that I wasn't the only one who loved a person who hurt me gave me strength. So if I can share
Yeah.
that with you, um, I don't recommend telling everybody in your life. I had
Yeah.
to, but if you can
Mhm.
share with a few trusted friends or find your people, go to Dr. Shannon and ask her to connect you with other people. There are online groups, there are in-person meetings. I offer coaching, contact me, but trying to find other people who've walked in your shoes to me is just one of the great ways to move forward. And there's a
The
lot of,
power of hearing you tell your darkest story that is covered with, to your point, so much maybe shame or guilt, um, and have someone say, "Me too." There's power in that, right?
there's so much power in that, so much power. And like I said, the shame on both sides is really killer. And
Mhm.
I think that a lot of, I'm sorry I'm saying men, but in my experience, it's
I
mostly
know.
men.
I
But
know, right?
the person who's cheating or doing some sort of secret sexual acting out,
Mhm.
there's a lot of shame there, and that keeps secrets, and then the secrets create this darkness that really affects the whole family.
Correct.
So to me, shining a light on the things that are in the dark can be really helpful. And there are people who are really well trained in this, and talk to
Correct.
people who are encouraging and who
Mhm.
understand the nuances of this situation. I think that betrayal trauma, like sex addiction, is something that is not really fully understood. But for me, it was really real. And
Yeah.
I needed to take good care so that I could keep being a functioning person and mother. And I wish that I could give everybody a pill to make this better, but
Yeah.
it does take some time and some faith. And like you said, some separation of doing your own work before coming together.
Yeah.
So, gosh, this went fast. I could talk about this all day,
I
but
know, right?
I
Thank
appreciate.
you for that encouraging word. And so, yeah, I'm going to drop all of your contact information in the show notes. But if someone wanted to reach out to you, tell me where you want me to send them.
I think maddiecorman.com is
Okay.
easy. And then there's a place where you can send email, and I'm easy to find.
Okay. Thank you so much, Maddie. And thank you for your contribution to this arena of community that you probably never wanted to sign up for, but are very willing to embrace. And your beautiful rendition in the Accidentally Brave play on HBO Max. I encourage everyone to go and watch it. So thank you for your time.
My pleasure. And thank you for showing up for this community as well. It's not easy, but I find it in a beautiful, beautiful community. And like you said, it's a community you didn't want to be a part of. But I'll also share my final thought is that a lot of people ask me about the friends that I've lost, and
Ah,
I really prefer to talk about the friendships that have deepened and the friendships that I've
mm,
gained. And this community is incredible. This is not limited to a bunch of lame people. I have met some of the most beautiful people
oh,
trudging this road.
I
And
love that.
and that also gives me hope and helps me remain committed to both my own work and helping other people get through this time.
Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you for that ending note. I appreciate that. Well, until next time, thank you so much, Maddie. And I so appreciate your time again.
Same here. Thank you. And I look forward. We'll do it again. We can talk. We only got so much.
I know, right?
Talk more.
All right.
Take good
Thank you.
care.
Bye bye.
Thank you.